Nike. Arguably one of the most iconic brands in sports since the 80s, but it hasn't always been that way. In fact, the company wasn't even named Nike to start. It was actually Blue Ribbon Sports, named after the blue ribbons that Phil Knight would win throughout his running career. But as with most startups, running a business can be messy, and this story is no exception. It took a lot of ups and downs in those early days to form the global superpower that we know today. But I guess the question is, what caused the change? Why isn't Blue Ribbon the first brand we think of in sports? Well, when the company was just getting started back in 1964, they were just a distributor for a manufacturer in Japan named Onitsuka Tiger, which would go on to be known as ASICS. But over the years, that relationship soured when Phil Knight discovered that Onitsuka was looking to partner with other American companies as distributors, most importantly doing all this behind his back. So he knew he needed to do something, and he started the process of finding new manufacturers for his very own line of shoes, and in that process totally rebrand the company. But as the process progressed and new manufacturers were asking for a name and a logo to put on the shoes, time was of the essence to come up with one. So over the course of the next few weeks, Phil Knight, Bill Bowerman, and others tried and failed to come up with a name. Nothing felt right. Phil Knight was dead set on Dimension 6, even though the others were not sold. Another top contender was Falcon. It wasn't until their first employee, Jeff Johnson, saw in a dream Nike, as many know, representing the Greek goddess of victory. So they went with it, mostly because they were running out of time. So cool, they had a name, but they still needed a logo. Enter Carolyn Davidson, then a student of Phil Knight at Portland State University. Phil Knight hired her in the past to make charts, posters, graphs, to earn a little bit of extra money. And now he was giving her the opportunity to make the face of Nike. So as the story goes, about 2 weeks later and 17 hours of actual work, Carolyn came back with several designs, none of which actually blew Phil Knight away, but this winged swoosh pattern stood out among the rest. Again, keep in mind that Phil Knight was under a closing deadline to get this done, so he chose the swoosh to resemble motion, athleticism, and famously said, "Maybe it'll grow on me." Carolyn Davidson named her price at $35 for the logo, coming out to about $2 an hour for her work, which for anyone curious is about $260 at the time, or about $15.30 an hour, which when you take the hindsight out of it and it's just a college student getting her start, it sounds fairly reasonable for the time. And she does go on later in her life to give credit to Phil Knight and Nike for giving her a start in the world of design. So as we all know, Nike and the swoosh went on to be one of the most recognizable brands in the world. But the other question is, what has allowed it to withstand this test of time? Well, for me, it's three things that stand out. First, being the simplicity. It's so easily recognizable and memorable for anyone that's seen it. Number two, the versatility. You can smack that thing on any product of any size, any color, and make it work. And number three, and what I think is the most important, is the marketing efforts over the years. Nike would not be where it is today without brilliant market campaigns and signing high-profile athletes at the top of their respective sports to endorse their products. And all of this in an industry that has fierce competition. And speaking of competition, fun fact about the Nike Cortez, one of Nike's first designs and one of its most successful early on. It was actually originally supposed to be called the Aztec, but there was already a competing tracksuit called Azteca Gold by a competitor by the name of Adidas. So Bill Bowerman decided to go with the name Cortez, who in his words kicked the out of the Aztecs. And that's just a small peek into the grit and the competitiveness needed in those early days to establish their brand. Today, that brand is worth about $150 billion, and all of that represented by a logo that costs $35. But Phil Knight and Nike didn't forget about Carolyn Davidson. In 1983, Nike presented her with a gold ring in the shape of a swoosh and about 500 shares of stock, which today is estimated to be worth about $4 million. She has said in interviews that she's sold some of the stock, but has still held on to all of those original shares. But anyways, let me know what you guys think about the story of Nike's founding down below. Let me know if I missed anything, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.